Let's be honest guys, Cities Skylines 2 caters to the North American male city planner fantasy. And I indulge in that fantasy even as a Scandinavian, building big highways, grids and fast food joints. But I woke up this morning with a burning desire to work on something a little more European feeling, and then I remembered that we actually built this cozy little European/Scandinavian themed fishing town back in February. Today we are revisiting this lovely place with new mods, new tricks and my own custom residential zone to make it even cozier. Now before we spread any more coziness around though, here's a friendly reminder to like this video if you enjoy my content, as that really helps out, and maybe even consider subscribing if you don't want to miss out on future content. Thank you very much. Oh man, does it feel good to be back in the small cozy city of Grantley. That is not going to cut it for a Scandinavian themed city. So I'll need something that's Scandinavian themed and kind of easy to pronounce. So maybe we're going with Fjords. Yeah, very creative. Surprisingly, I am actually making some money in this city in the Economy 2.0 update, but there's a major caveat here. So for one, I've used the 529 tiles mod to just buy the tiles I actually need, including this one because I have a transformer station out here. So I'm effectively not paying for any tile upkeep yet because I have so few tiles. And additionally, I don't have any services. Like I import electricity and then I pump up some groundwater to the actual town, but that's it. The rest is just, yeah, there's nothing. So obviously we are gonna need to provide some service coverage, and it's going to be much easier now that we have the detailers patch and the small service variants. But before we do any of that, I'm actually gonna do some detailing and just some minor like aesthetic changes which I think could make a major difference here in Fjords. So the first thing I want to do is just revamp the road network ever so slightly, and then we're going to use the recolor mod to recolor much of the buildings in the city, and that's just going to create a very dramatic effect. Later on, I'm also going to be using a custom low density residential theme I've created in the asset editor, which I think is it's a pretty interesting look. You guys should look forward to that. But I think, yeah, road networks, the first on the menu. And we need some pedestrian stuff here, right? I think that's just a missed opportunity. So I'm going to enable some Anarchy so I don't wreck any buildings. And then I think I'm just gonna bring this back ever so slightly so that we still have our marina intact. And we're going to upgrade this to a pedestrianized segment. So that this US muscle car here in our Scandinavian city will have to get out. Yeah, this guy's probably pretty mad. I think we'll upgrade this part of the street as well, so that we've got a bit of a little triangle here of pedestrian road where we can add, you know, lots of props. We'll have outdoor seatings and restaurants and whatnot. And then I think here we might use one of these new small roundabouts where we've got a bit of detailing going on in the center. So I'm gonna make sure I still have Anarchy on, because yeah, if I do this without Anarchy, I'm gonna wreck stuff. I don't want to do that. And this one is actually looking a little weird. How come? Oh well, I'll try to get that fixed. Do we need another roundabout here? No, we probably don't. I think this is fine for now. So with those tiny changes in place, and before I do any detailing, adding props and decals and whatnot to the pedestrianized area here, I think we're gonna play a bit with this color mod, because that is such a cool addition. So there's a specific type of color on the actual roofing here that I really like. It's this kind of dark red, maroonish. Yeah, I'm not great with colors, but it's something like that. And then there's this white color here used for the facade. So I think if I copy this bright color here and we add it to this segment here, and I think this overall look is very, very nice. So we've got like we can maybe just tune down ever so slightly like this, so that it's not kind of like it's freshly painted. It doesn't really have to be, because obviously these buildings are quite old. And then if I click this button here, activates the color painter tool, then I can click any other building and it's effectively going to switch to this color scheme. Now, my initial plan was to do this for every single old building in town, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do it for most of them, but then we'll have some buildings that have different color schemes, because while I think that it makes sense that when these buildings were built as the town was founded many years ago, then the materials and maybe also just for aesthetic purposes kind of ended up being this color scheme here. But you know, people have been renovating their houses ever since then, so unless you have like really strict rules on what materials to use, then people have been allowed to use other materials when renovating their roofs and stuff like that. Maybe you know, today this color scheme is once again enforced, but at least here in Denmark it's the case that many of the renovations you saw during the 70s, which were generally a bit of a poorer decade where people had less disposable income, meant that they simply had to choose some, you know, cheaper options for renovating the roofs of their old houses and stuff like that. So you don't really have that beautiful old uniform look anymore. And I also think that when I do it like this, it's actually it's a little more interesting. I think the narrative I just created, I think it makes sense, but I also just think that it looks a little more interesting than just coloring everything. And in the end it looks something like this. So you can definitely see that there's like a pretty common theme, but you have, you know, outliers, especially some of the more modern buildings haven't really followed through to this tradition here, and some of the buildings here where we have some new roofing, so you know, we can just assume this would be like a copper roof or something like that. I'm gonna do an additional little detailing fix before I continue. Better Bulldozer, remove sub-elements, and then I'm gonna get rid of the chimneys here. Because I did have to replace the industry we originally had here at the port, because it was placed back in February, so it basically didn't work anymore. So I just replaced with kind of warehouse looking-ish buildings, but not entirely, so some of them had chimneys. But this is just like a really easy, nice trick to just get rid of them. And we've even got a space here for one of the newer parking lots. So why not grab this modest parking lot and just kind of see if we can fit that in here. Yeah, quick and easy. So with that bit of detailing done, I think it's time we look a bit into the service coverage, because it is pretty terrible, as I said. There's basically no coverage, and it's really affecting the overall happiness of Fjordholm. High crime is at the very top of the list, so I guess that's the first thing we'll be solving. If we have a look at our police tab here, we have a wide variety of options for us. We've got this new police station introduced with the detailers patch, which is really nice. I mean, it's still a sizable asset, but I guess we'll just kind of have to do. So I think I'm just gonna remove these assets here. Oh, I don't want anything to grow here. And then we'll be placing the police station down. I wish I had an even smaller solution, and I mean, I do have this rural police station, which is a custom asset, but I just don't really think the aesthetics of it fit all that well here, because this isn't really a rural place, obviously. So I think we're just gonna go with the quote-unquote vanilla way and go with the small police station here. It does provide 6 patrol vehicles, which I'm hopeful is going to be sufficient for our needs. Now I'm just gonna check for funsies how it would look if we change the color of the roof here. Maybe it needs to be a little darker, something like this, but otherwise I think it would be kind of fun if at least most of the municipal buildings and institutions kind of followed the same color scheme. We've got our first patrol vehicles entering the small town here, and I think we do this small station here justice by just adding in a few bushes and whatnot, because it's a little rough here around the edges due to the massive elevation differences. But if we just add in a few bushes and whatnot, then I think we can get away with it and call it a day. And oh my, all patrol vehicles are on duty. So yeah, hopefully they're gonna fix our crime issue real quick. And while that did cut our profit in half, then we're far from done. We at the very least need some healthcare coverage before we move on to any other projects. So let's open the menu here, if I can find it. There we go. We've once again got this small healthcare clinic. Really cool asset. It's not even small enough for my needs here. But I guess it will do because, yeah, I mean, it's about as good as it's gonna get. And since we do have kind of a cluster of services here, slightly on the outskirts of the old town, I think it would make sense to also get our healthcare clinic placed somewhere here. So I am considering actually placing it alongside Elizabeth Lane here, and then maybe just upgrading this short stretch of Belmont Street into a key, so that we've got a bit of a wall here basically. Although that's not, it's not fully what I want. I still have a few clipping issues, it would seem. So maybe if I just move it ever so slightly, let's see if we can do a tiny bit of terraforming here. Make the brush real small. Yeah, it's probably not gonna help all that much, but we'll smoothen things out here and just make sure we've got a good layer of bushes and small trees to kind of cover up any imperfections. Much the same as we did with the police station. So we'll just grab this small bush variant here. Make sure we've got a lot of stuff here on the very edges. Cool, and I think that's pretty much good to go. 3 ambulances in stock, which should also be sufficient. They'll probably all be dispatching here at the very start because we do have a bit of a small healthcare crisis since we've had no coverage so far, but then things should settle down. We very obviously also have an issue with dev care, and I think this time I am actually going to use one of the custom assets I've grabbed because the Vanilla Cemetery is obviously way too big, and the crematorium as well is actually quite a sizable asset. But I've grabbed some custom dev care from the PDX mods, which includes this old cemetery, which is only 6x8 and includes 500 tombs and 2 hearses. That sounds so morbid. And I think a cool location to maybe place this would like be out here on this peninsula here. Because I imagine a town like this, which is, you know, has a strong industry in fishing and has had so for many hundreds of years, quite a few people have also lost their lives at sea. So I think it would be kind of obvious to create like a dedicated cemetery or graveyard that is very much facing the open waters where so many people have perished throughout the years. Yeah. Only got more morbid with my roleplay, I guess. But I'm gonna try and just see if I can expand on this peninsula ever so slightly. Probably gonna get rid of just a few of these boulders here, but I think we're just gonna wait for that. I need to place this at first, just so I have an idea of the look. Okay, and it's got like a major tomb at the very end, which I think is pretty cool, so probably just try to place it somewhere like this. Now of course it does actually, you know, it completely flattens the terrain. That's just how it works with the terraforming of this particular asset here, and that's okay, because I think if I can just kind of smoothen this out a bit and get a road up here, maybe a continuation actually of this small road here, then I can probably just try and I can probably manage to make it look all right. So let's see, we'll enable some contour lines and then see if we can just snake our way up this road without too massive a incline. So that's obviously, yeah, that's actually not going to work. I might have to go behind the industry here with like a little back road. Let's see how that is actually gonna work, because then maybe I'll be able to follow the contour lines then. Okay, so let's see. I don't want an incline of more than like 10%, ideally, because that's gonna be really tricky for vehicles. And we are so close. 9.6. Can we make the final stretch here? Not quite. Not unless I actually go alongside the edge of the peninsula here and then I cut around. Yeah, it's gonna be 11%. I think that's okay. And then we'll get one of these nice little roundabouts in place. I think we'll just use this version here. And I think I need a little alignment, it seems. Can I just... there we go. There's some fences here I'll be removing. Actually, just removing this fence here is probably fine. Might wanna keep these fences, you know, there. I think we're gonna have a pretty severe drop here at least. And there'd be a terrible irony in dying while visiting a loved one's grave. Yeah. Cool, let's get rid of these trees and do a little detailing of our own. I'll be grabbing this thick river bed surface here and just see if I can like make small custom paths that kind of snakes its way through the graveyard here. So I think that would make a lot of sense. Maybe a few small ones connected. That is pretty good. We'll get one over here as well. Yeah, I had to redraw that, but now I think it's looking pretty good. We've got some pretty impressive views from out here. I guess this grave, which is very, very significant, might be like a former mayor or, you know, someone who participated in like founding the town or something like that. Now here's a question. What's this old cemetery with its graveyard capacity gonna be worth if we don't start moving some more people in here that can die off and actually start filling this? Yeah, you hadn't thought about that, huh? I'm gonna remove the fence again. We're gonna need some more people. And we've got Crest Lane here, which should probably be named something else. But it's zonable. I think we're gonna place the buildings ourselves, though. And I am actually going to opt for some slightly higher density buildings even. Because we are, you know, at a vantage point up here where we've got quite the nice views, something to actually look at. So I think it would be very interesting to just have a few slightly higher density buildings up here. And of course, it can be somewhat tricky given the style of the buildings we're seeing here. Maybe even a high density tower built, maybe along the footprint is what I'm trying to say, the base here. Something like this I think would probably be fitting. It's obviously a more modern development. It's the tallest in the town, but things here have to be somewhat dense even with a low population just due to the geographical features, right? So I think if we have this in place, we are in a pretty... Maybe I should just check actually if we can get a mixed use going. European styled with a lot depth of just 2. Some building that also looks slightly modern to be placed out here. Maybe I don't really see it, so maybe I'll just be adding this one, and maybe we can get this one in here as well. We can always just use move it to make a little slight adjustment of what we place. Pretty happy with this initial setup, and then for the rest I think we're just gonna be filling in with some row house units. And we've got levels 1 through 5 here, and they're gonna be mainly higher level buildings. I think this is a pretty good location, and these are some of the oldest buildings in the city as well. Very quickly on during the history of the city, this lane here was kind of, it became sought after, right? Because this is where you'll get the maximum, the best views basically. I'll have some slightly less fancy row houses mixed in as well, of course, and we'll just get a few in here as well. Mixed up, there we go. And then I'm gonna move in with move it, but and just do a little manual alignment. I think I'm gonna remove that one, keep this one at the very edge of development here. But otherwise, just gonna grab some of these rows here and get it aligned. And of course, the party trick, the thing that changes everything, the entire aesthetic, is grabbing our custom color theme here and applying it to most of these buildings. Maybe even include, oh, should I include the new tower here? Yeah, I will. So it might be a slightly borrowing 70s development, but they did actually go with like a tiled roof in the very same style as the oldest buildings, and it painted like a white brick facade. So let's just see how that looks from afar. I am pretty happy with this new little development. You know what, we could probably fit in an additional road here on the mountainside. So we're gonna grab, I think we're gonna grab the alley for this one because it is very, very steep. But before we do that, we might actually just go ahead and upgrade this to a road segment. So I think I'm just gonna upgrade the whole thing, and then hopefully we won't. I'm just gonna pause, and then if we see any issues with like pathing, I'm gonna fix that. But yeah, I think we can have this as an actual road, given that it's not very steep, it's very close to the port here, and then potentially just remove parking from this side here so that we can maybe plant some trees and whatnot. We might turn parts of it into like maybe this segment into like a key here, just to kind of mix it up a bit, because things are a little more steep down here, but otherwise I think that looks pretty good, and it's going to look good when we get the parked cars as well, of course, and a bit of detailing here alongside this road where we have the planters. But where was I? Yeah, adding the alley here, we're gonna go, let's see, enable contour lines, disable all snapping, go for a continuous setup, and then I'm gonna disable Anarchy so that I can kind of move close, but hopefully not removing any of the buildings down below. But yeah, let's see. And just like before, I want to avoid too much more than 10%. But I mean, that can be kind of tricky, which is okay. It's okay. I think we got a segment with 11, which I think is, I think that's just fine. We can work with that, and then we'll need a connection down here. Maybe we can, I really don't want to ruin that road there. So how much would this be? This would be 30%, so that would be a major no. And we could kind of maybe do for something like that. Maybe over here, actually. This guy, 6%, I think we're gonna get rid of this guy here. That is gonna be the connection we actually want. And we're gonna keep this as an alley because obviously it's very, very steep. We might need to do a bit of terraforming, but otherwise I am going to redo some of the mountain ranges here, as well as the type of trees we're seeing. I'm gonna switch from these pines to a very spruce-based a tree line, which is going to be much thicker than this. But first things first is just getting placed these row houses here, of course. Let's see, color check to get fixed first. Most of these. Pretty good. Some segments should probably be keyed. Most segments should be keyed. Maybe not this one, that's not necessary, but the rest of them are already keyed, so that's just fine. And then if we are gonna make things look a little more interesting here, I'm going to drop brush strength to about 40, go to size 30, grab this mountain 03, and then I'm just gonna create some ridges in the mountain here. And just kind of smoothen this out, make it a little more interesting. Bring these ridges a bit up here just to make the mountain a little better to look at. I think making realistic mountains is actually rather hard in this game. Depends on the texture you're using for mountains, of course, but I think this is a little better. Although I don't want any actual like I don't want any parts of this to like be lower, so that's a bit of a bummer. I'm just gonna make sure I don't have that. So in hindsight, go for less than 40% because that's obviously too strong. And we've got this look now, which I think it looks all right. It's always going to look a little odd when the assets flatten the entire stretch of terrain that they're placed on. But let's just see if we can kind of change up by getting rid of some of these pines here. Some of them can poke through, so that's why I'm just kind of right-clicking here and there, not removing all of them. But I am removing just most of them. They're not going to be like the primary tree we'll be seeing here. And then we'll go for maybe 100 to start with. All ages except for the sapling, and then I'm just gonna spam with Anarchy off, otherwise they're just gonna end up everywhere and it's gonna create a bit of a mess. I can always move in with the single placement tool with Anarchy on afterwards just to create a more thick look. I think that result looks a lot better, a little more realistic as well. Spruce trees are definitely the dominating factor in an area like this. They have a great ability to just grow on very, very steep terrain and almost grow on cliff sides as well, because they don't require as much nutrition, it seems. So yeah, looks pretty good. Now, using recolor is a very nice party trick, but the real party trick here is going to be the custom low-density European residential zone I've actually created for this particular town here. And I hope you guys will be just as excited about it as I am, not gonna lie. So if we open our zonings here, you'll see I have an additional zone. It doesn't have a title nor a description because I don't know how to add one, and it doesn't really matter too much for me. But I guess it's a good point in time to just stress that I'm no expert in the asset editor and it's in its beta stage. So please be careful how you use it. Things may really change as it officially launches, hopefully sometime later this year. But I do have a custom zone here, which we can use to zone up these areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zone a small stretch here to showcase you guys exactly how this zone looks and why I created it. And then I'm going to be manually placing buildings from the zone in some of the other places of the town here. But let's just get this cleared and let it grow in so that you can get a better idea of my thought process behind this. So what I actually needed was some older looking European houses. I think that's sorely missing from the game. There are some in the current vanilla themes that kind of do the job, but yeah, I just, one thing I noticed was that when I started looking at the motel assets, now this is a signature building, so that's not a motel, but they kind of have this older European style, especially some of the smaller motels, the 2x2 and 2x3, I think it is. I just don't like having them as motels because they're commercial buildings and the props and the surfaces are not really fitting for using them as residential. So what I've basically done, as you can start to see now, is I've just repurposed all of them as residential buildings instead. And I've created some very basic lots where they have some, they have some gardens out back, they have some patios, they have a few bushes and stuff you can easily remove if need be. But it's just an entirely different look than the regular residential theme, which is very obvious as we move out here, because this is just zoning the regular European theme. And I mean, the actual assets look okay, it's just not really what I've been looking for. So here you have them, basically motel assets repurposed as residential assets, and I've tried to create a bit of variety by flipping some of the buildings, having them in different spots. But yeah, the diversity is not going to be huge because I think there are like 3 or 4 buildings in total, so it is limited how much we have to work with. But I just think in general it's a much better fit for what I'm actually trying to build here. And this hopefully also works quite well with the recolor mod, so I'm probably once again not going to recolor all the houses because some of them actually look quite nice with other colors. But if we move in and have a look, I think that looks pretty nice. Now, while I'm really happy with this little custom theme, or this custom zone, sorry, and these results, something I also needed was houses that were on a very small lot, because this is something you will often see in these Scandinavian towns and cities built on very rugged mountainous terrain. You'll see this in other parts of Europe as well. So I also took these variants I've created, and I created a small handful of 2x2 versions, which is going to be a much better fit for like a hillside. So I'm going to just try and create such a neighborhood here, and I haven't really tested this before, so it's going to be interesting to see how this actually works out. I should probably enable some contour lines so I don't create too crazy a setup here, but I'm going to try and create like a small mountain road here that kind of snakes its way behind some of these buildings. And then I think here we can kind of move a bit further up into this mountain here. I think if we start with something like this, I can do like minor adjustments. Whoa, that was actually a tree and not a node. We can do some minor adjustments just to the places where the sloping is a little too weird. But generally, I like that the road is kind of crazy and goes up and down, because it's kind of the idea to actually pressure test this. So I've not actually zoned these before, so it's gonna be interesting to see. But as long as there's just 2 tiles, then I can actually get these placed. And here I'm just gonna manually restrict myself to 2. And of course the reason I want this is that when I zone buildings or place them manually, they are going to just flatten the terrain, as you guys can see, or more or less flatten the terrain. Okay, it looks pretty crazy. But they're mostly gonna flatten the terrain, and it's going to create these very steep cliffs here, and that's unavoidable. But it's a lot better when the actual asset is only like 2 tiles deep. In this case, 2 zoning tiles. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how this looks as these actually begin to spawn here. Just gonna see if I can do. Yeah, I'm not gonna adjust too much because I'm just causing a host of issues, I think. Let's just see them grow. So as you can see, just as with the regular sized lots, variety-wise, I'd love for more variety. It definitely isn't perfect, and I could make this theme a little nicer, I guess, by trying to see if I can turn some of the buildings at other angles as well and just add a bit more variety. But I think, with what we've got available, this is probably fine. And what you can easily do then is just move in, get rid of these hedges here. They obviously start looking a little wonky if there's just a little too much elevation. And we can also, of course, just get rid of these big grassy patches as well. They will also look a little wonky with too much elevation. And then just, moving in maybe with like a brush here, using a lot of different bushes of all kinds of sizes. And just turning this bad boy up is going to just help kind of cover up some of the imperfections. But otherwise, just a little terraforming is also going to help a lot. So I'm going to do that in just a second. But basically, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It was a bit of a gamble, try and spend some time getting acquainted with the asset editor to create this. But we can, of course, also just move in with some spruce, which we have in abundance already within this theme here, and just kind of add them to cover up some of the issues. Something I also just want to try and do is maybe actually use the path here to try and break up the zone here, so we can have houses on either side. Now that I have the small ones available, can I just get this fixed? Thank you very much. So that we can just get all this zoned up as well. And I think it's just gonna look a lot more cozier doing something like that. So yeah, it is going to require a lot of bushes, manually planted trees to just kind of hide the imperfections. But otherwise, I'm very happy with this look here. And we can make it just a little easier on the eyes by doing just a tiny bit of terraforming. So what I'm doing here is just right-clicking to apply the height of the actual building. And then I can just kind of smoothen this out a bit so that not every house has like a huge cliff face right behind it. This is probably gonna look a little more natural. I mean, in reality, of course, you would actually also carve into the cliff to actually be able to make these homes. So it's not because it's, you know, directly unrealistic. I just kind of want to smoothen it out a bit. And I mean, this is a place I'd like to live. And of course, I've just rezoned these 2 strips of houses as well to this new theme so that we have this uniform look. Because if we're gonna have more modern residential buildings, it needs to be further out from the town. And we have this peninsula out here, which is not as steep or as crazy, so I think it's just begging for some tiny hilly roads with these small beautiful houses nicely lined up. So once again, we're grabbing the alley, we're going for the continuous tool. No snapping or anything like that, and I'm gonna see if I can avoid using Anarchy as well. Might be a bit tricky, at least to kind of get it started here, because it's probably gonna be too steep. So I think we're just gonna create like a little platform at first for our little road here. So if I just right click at this level and try to bring it up here in a gentle fashion, just get rid of these plants here, and then it's going to work, and it's going to give me a good start here. And I wanna avoid too steep an elevation, so 9, 10 is probably fine, but not much more than that. Gonna try and go with the contour lines here, but also kind of follow the peninsula, so I don't want to go too far up too quickly, and I can of course always move it to make slight adjustments. But we're slowly moving up the hillside here, and when we get up here we should have some fantastic views. We might even be able to fit houses on either side if I can work a bit with the terrain, and maybe we should even try and get some houses out here on the other side. So now we're really splurging, creating some dream real estate. So let's see if we can start all the way over here and avoid too crazy elevation changes. But obviously we'll need to go down to properly connect up to this road, and that's gonna be a bit steep, isn't it? So maybe we'll need something that's a little more well catered. Let's see. That's gonna be just a little much, so I think 20, that's obviously too crazy, but we can get to 9% here, and I still think this is... I was about to say okay, but things are looking a little crazy here. And I selected something I didn't want to select, so we'll just use a bit of move it to just kind of get this looking a little better. Otherwise, the rest of this road actually looks pretty okay, I find. And let's see, a few adjustments definitely needed. But this run here is looking more or less just looking ready, so I'm just gonna add like a tiny roundabout out here. And I don't think... Actually, I'm tempted to just do something like this as well, because we can even have a house kinda flanking it. Okay, so we only know how good or bad this is gonna look when we actually start zoning these in, and I'm gonna zone it first and then hope that the a variety is good enough. Otherwise, I'll just move in and place a few manually where need be. But once again, we're only going 2 deep, so 2 zoning tiles deep, so I avoid some of the bigger lots to spawn, because I fear that would look a little odd here. And I might even leave a bit of distance here, so we have some cliff parts of the mountain here that's kind of protruding as well. I think that would look pretty nice. And we're gonna have the same here. And let's just try on either side here, like we talked about. At least just get a few houses. And then I'm probably going to just actually manually be placing one here. And I already have selected what I need, so that's absolutely perfect. So we're just gonna get a nice house placed out here at the very edge of the, or very end, sorry, of the road here. And oh man, this is gonna be such a cool road. And of course, we're actually still missing this little lane here. So let's just try and get a few of those in place as well. So I'm gonna do the same trick here to kind of just ease in some of the crazy terraforming here a bit, so that it's obvious that we had to kind of dig into the mountainside to actually place the houses and get the foundations in place. But it's not super steep, you know, we've smoothened it out ever so slightly in building these. And maybe even placing some of the like actual hotels could be like the cherry on top for this area here. So I'm just gonna find some that once again aren't too deep. So these are basically the buildings I've been using for this theme, except for this one because I found it to be just a little too big for that purpose. But I think we can then maybe place that here so that we've got a nice little mountainside hotel here. I think that's a pretty decent fit. And then the bigger versions, it seems, will need to go deeper than 2 tiles, and I really don't want that. I imagine the views from up here are gonna be pretty insane, so let's just use the first person mod to actually kind of check if that's the case. See if we can get down on ground level here. And it's a bit of a shaky walk, but maybe we should actually jog. Yeah, let's run. Oh. We are clipping into the ground here. Ooh. Yeah. I guess the terrain here is a little wonky. Let's see if we're gonna clip into the ground as we move out here. Or we can see the actual views these people have. We can. At least if we move a bit in here. Would you look at that? What a fantastic little road this is. I think it would be really cool to also just have a road back here that kind of follows the coastline and kind of goes real low. So I think in this particular case, I am going to do just a bit of terraforming. Let's see if we go, oh, that's 30 is probably fine, and just above sea level. Something like that, and then we're just going to follow the existing coastline here and move over here so that we can hopefully get a connection to this place up here. So I'm just going to make the terrain a little easier to work with, and then maybe bring that all the way over here. And now we'll get the road in place. And doing that much the same as we've done before, let's enable some contour lines and see if I can branch off from here. So it's gonna be, oh, it's gonna be very, very steep though. Yeah, I'm gonna have to see how this actually looks. But I think for now it's fine, it's fine. Gonna enable Anarchy. That is going to make it a little easier for me to actually create this road here. It's gonna complain about being in water and yada yada yada. So yeah, we're gonna go Anarchy and just watch the elevation here. Maybe see if I can do my own little... Yeah, I'm probably just gonna do a roundabout here at the very end, and then maybe just use move it to kind of move that roundabout a bit. Maybe create a bit of a curve here instead. Something like this. That's okay. That's okay. Maybe we should just... If we elevate this, then... Is that going to... Yeah, that's going to help a bit. Lower this segment here. I don't know what happened. Oh, yeah, right. Wait a minute. It's because I actually intended to branch out and get like a small road in place here as well, but... yeah, I'm actually gonna do that. And I'm gonna see if I can zone on that road as well. I guess if I upgrade this to a key, that's gonna flip the zoning to that road as well. It is. Great. Let's see how this is gonna look and work. Tried to do something just a little different here to mix it up ever so slightly, but I think overall it's turned out quite nice. It's also a very cozy road. Once again, a place I wouldn't mind living, at least if there aren't any storm flooding, I guess. But I did promise you guys some detailing, so let's jump into some downtown detailing and potentially a bit of detailing of the port as well. Let's keep things relatively simple, you know? So for downtown, I'm thinking some table sets and a few bits and bobs here and there to just kind of have some areas here alongside the pedestrianized street where you can grab a coffee, maybe a bite of food as well. So we'll just go for a table set, see if we can find it. And we've already got some shops here since this is mixed use. That's real nice, so let's just see if we can get in a few table sets here, different types. We've got a place over here as well. I would love for people to actually be using these tables, but I guess we can manage without. Let's see, we've got a table set more here. I hope some of these buildings could go for restaurants. Otherwise, there's a lot of... Oh, wait, that's actually... Oh, that's a randomized set. Interesting. Just add a few of these, I think. Maybe have a set here. So that does look kind of odd. We'll just go for this. And then maybe... we'll add these fun sets here. And then let's see if we've got like a parasol. We do. Just so that you can seek some shade if that's what you want to do in the summer at least. Get a few of those in. Add one, maybe add one over here. And then they would have flowers, like flower pots, if we've got any of... We do. So I guess the restaurants would have a few of these maybe. Just adding these randomly. I don't want to, you know, spend too much time on this. because I'm just trying to be quick about it and not add too much detail. As I find that if I detail one area too much, it kind of sets out precedence for other parts of the town as well, and that's really not what I want. Can I find like a menu cards of some sort? Cardio patio. Yeah, that's not exactly cardio we're looking for here. It's actually something to eat. There you go. We'll just add a card here. See if I can grab another one. Maybe we should actually have like a food cart here as well, so you can get some popcorn. Couple even. Might add one over here, and we'll need to move it seems, and just elevate that a little bit. Something like that, and then that really deserves a table set of its own. Like just maybe a couple of these will do. And we'll be grabbing move it, elevate it, and elevation lock so that it doesn't suddenly go anywhere just because we start terraforming some stuff. Now I would like to add some dedicated planters here for the trees instead of just having these randomly placed throughout. Now these trees were initially placed when this was just a regular road, so it makes sense that they don't really align all that well anymore. So I'd rather just we move in with some of these custom brown planters here. I'm just gonna add 3 on this side here, and we'll be adding 3 over here as well. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Hopefully it's gonna look all right. And then we need a suitable tree, and the birch is like a good option because it's relatively slim, so it doesn't really detract from being able to actually see the detailing you're doing, which I think is nice. It's not as realistic because you'd probably try to provide maybe a bit more shade using like an oak. But yeah, I want to be able to see what I'm building down here, so that's pretty much why I'm doing it like this. And I think we can fit in maybe a few additional table sets here. Something like this, and then a flower pot. Cool, we'll grab the same planters here to add in some trees. And I think we can go for a birch on like either side of the street here. Should look pretty good. That looks all right. I think let's just Alt F so that we're in first person mode and have a look. I think that looks pretty good. There's really an awesome view from down here. We're sinking. Yeah, let's get up again. Some table sets and like a food cart. Really basic stuff, but I think it works. And then for the port detailing, I think I remember we had some like stacks of logs and stuff here previously, and they're now gone. So I'm wondering if those props just aren't available anymore. Plank maybe? No. Let's just search for stack, see what we can actually find. Metal stacks, random metal stacks, wood stacks. Okay, I think this is... I just remember I had access to some bigger ones, but I may be wrong. But anyways, let's just add 1 million of these then. And then if we enable the snap to surface, we might be able to just stack some of these on top of each other. Awesome how easy that is. Something like this, and then we're moving into net lanes. Grabbing the gravel lane here, continuous tool, no snapping. So it's just to kind of look like the trucks that drive in here, or like small cranes or whatever it may be, to kind of transport or just get these placed so that they can be loaded up onto the ships and be sailed around the world as export goods. And that looks pretty okay. Decal, stain decals, and we'll just grab some large ones. Make this a little more stained up, and we're gonna do that for much of the port here. Not because it's supposed to look like it's falling apart, but you know, this is fishing industry, so things are gonna get stained and a bit muddy and dirty as the years pass by. And I think that's it for the port detailing. Like I said, want to keep it relatively simple. I might revamp some of the keys or lack of keys over here. I basically just did this like sort of an experimentation when I initially built it, but I may revamp the keys or other parts of the harbor as well if I continue working on this city. Maybe even trying to get some cargo rail traffic down here. Now that would be a real challenge. But I think the final little thing I'd like to do before wrapping up is I'm going to replace some of the row houses here on the very ends of these two rows with some of my own small historic buildings instead. So I'm gonna disable Anarchy so that it's going to remove these homes here, and then I'm just gonna place a few of these. So we'll go for something like this, just so that we have like sort of a transition in density from these row houses and then down to these houses here, these single family homes. And we'll just of course grab our little theme here, make sure that it's all looking nice. So I am just wrapping up by adding these sunken apple trees so that it kind of looks like, you know, grass that isn't really being cut, or large bushes, something in between. But yeah, it just adds a bit more variety to just using the standard bushes of the game. This is a fun little technique to use instead. But I think that is pretty much gonna be a wrap for Fjordholm. So I'd be very curious to hear you guys' feedback if you've got any suggestions for where to take Fjordholm next, because I'm thinking that we're gonna turn this into a series now, so that we've also got a bit of European different themed stuff than just East Haven and Riverview to kind of add to the mix. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions for what we should build here next. I'm thinking some railways kind of squeezed in here somehow, hopefully without demolishing too much, but that would definitely be a challenge. Anyways, I want to thank you guys so much for all the support and watching it till the very end. Gonna wrap up with some cinematics now, and I hope to see you on the next one. Goodbye.